Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video. I'm Malcolm West and this is the 11th in our series of Planner Masterclasses. In this session we're going to be looking at using our planner file as a template, feeding back into it the things that we've learned from the projects we've been delivered so that our new projects already start from a more advanced starting point. This is really important in terms of managing lessons learned, being more efficient and quick to start up your projects, and it's a key thing in terms of developing a project management maturity, having repeatable processes and templating and consistency of your actions. So we're going to split that into a couple of sections. There's 7 different points here. Some of them have already been covered quite extensively in other Planner Masterclass sessions, and so I'll mainly refer to that rather than going into those in detail, but it's worth covering them off again because it's a good checklist for pulling together your planner templates. The item on the end here, shifting start dates, this is brand new in the latest version of Planner that we just released this week. New feature to help in this particular regard. There's a link at the bottom if you want to jump straight to that particular session. You don't want to check out all the rest, but all worthwhile having a look through as a refresher. So let's get cracking. So here's my planner file. I'm going to look at 2 or 3 different example files as we go through this session. The first one here is helpful in talking about calendar and non-working time. So the model within Planner which decides when tasks start and finish is dependent upon dependencies, but also task durations, the amount of hours or days or weeks or months we think it's going to take to complete a particular task. So we'll know the start date. It'll either start on a particular date or following the completion of another task, perhaps with a lag, and it'll run for a certain amount of time. So when it starts and when it actually then finishes is dependent upon the working period. So in this case we've got a standard working period and we've got Saturday and Sunday are showing as non-working days. We can see those highlighted here. In practice we should be having some other days, Easter and May bank holidays and things like that should be appearing in this particular planner file, and they're not currently because we need to make sure we include them appropriately. So let's have a look at that. And we're going to come up here to File and Preferences, and we often come in like this, and the one we're particularly interested in is the global calendar, and this determines the that scheduling mechanism for this particular file. It's not universal, it's just for this particular file, so you can change it in your templates so you don't have to change it in each file later on. It shows us which days are working days and the hours that are working hours within that, and Saturday and Sunday are non-working days, and then we've got some exception dates that that have different rules for them, and these are our holidays. So we can see we're showing the bank holidays here from last year, and if I wanted to put in the bank holidays for this year, I'd simply copy them. I could put in as many as I could copy a load of rows at once, and we'll go 2020 like that. I can check that just to make sure that the logic and layout of this is correct, and then I can OK it. Now of course really I'm probably going to want to put in 1 or 2 years ahead of bank holidays from my particular working environment. The dates obviously have to be specifically set. Some, like New Year's Day, Christmas Day, Boxing Day in the UK working calendar, can be just copied over the year like I've just done then, but others fall on particular dates associated with religious festivals or the first or last Monday of a month, and therefore you have to put them in specifically. There isn't really a repeatable rule that's going to enable you to do that. So by putting them all into your template for a couple of years ahead, you can then be confident that during that timescale every project that's run with one of these templates will be covering off those days nicely. If you have planned closures for your factory, for example, you can put those in. That's also a common way of doing, and obviously changing shift patterns to match the working hours that you're running. So that's a key part of changing our templates from the default one that you get to match the things that are right for you. The next one we're going to talk about is frequently used views. So hopefully you've discovered views. They're covered in Planner Masterclass number 1. because they're such a major part of what it is that we do that makes Planner different to just some scheduling tool. In the ribbon here, if I just change over to views and filters and select a view, you'll see I've got a number of different views here which are going to narrow down the data I'm looking at, focus in, present it how I want it, rather than just we see everything. These are the standard built-in ones, but I've got a couple of extra ones here that I'm really interested in, that I use often, and I want my team to use them as well. So I've pre-configured those. I've taken an existing one perhaps and adjusted it, saved it under a new name, and they're going to appear here. Now this saves me having to go into every single plan and reset that up every time. If I save it in the template, it's always going to be here in every copy of this file thereafter. So that's a really useful thing to be able to do. The detail of working with views, as I say, is covered in Planner Masterclass number 1. So resource information is our next point. Some people will just run a fairly simple plan. It'll just be some tasks and dates and some descriptions. But most people will go on either straight away or fairly soon they'll mature into storing resource information for those tasks. Who's working on it? What proportion of their time are they spending on those particular tasks? They might even be going into costing based on all that as well. And then we have another Planner Masterclass about the financial side of it. When you're building these up, you can just come in and pick somebody from your list. You'll already have the resources you've set up already. If you want to add some more, you could pick someone from the list here. Now that list is built up for you gradually over time. As you start to put people in, they will appear as remembered resources for this project on that list. But you can pre-configure that list if you want to have, for example, all the people that work in your particular business or team saved on that list. So they're already there. And then you don't have to worry about consistency of data entry. Some people use initials, some people use names, etc. Of course, if you just want to add a new person, you can just do that by simply typing them in, and they will then appear on the project like that. But you'll notice they don't have a cost rate associated with them. And that's because we haven't brought one in yet. So we're just going to go and have a look at that sort of further information that we might manage about resources. So I come up here, File, Manage Resources. Here's my resource list. We can see with the new item I've just added at the bottom. And just by clicking into that, I can then come in and perhaps give it a charge rate and perhaps some initials like that. We do use initials at some places, like this extra display column against the Gantt. Now this set is the one I've built up gradually, but if I wanted, like I say, a standardized resource set across all of my projects, I could use simply this import from CSV or paste from Excel, and that allows me to paste in 3 columns of data: resource name, initials, and cost per hour, and I can populate that table in a standardized way. Yes, those rates might change, and therefore you might have to change it in plans going forward, but it's about getting everything at the right starting point as best you can. Actually, in the multi-user platform, we have a much better way of injecting that content for you. But I'm thinking here about largely our free users, and this is the tools that they have for dealing with that. So that's one way of assembling resource information. I'm going to talk about something else about resourcing a little bit later on as well. So we're just going to save those changes like that. And we'll get into the habit of saving these changes back into our template as we work along. So the next thing is about personalizing logs. Again, we've got a detailed Planner Masterclass number 5, which covers this. And here we're going to start breaking off out of the planning area of Planner and into risks and issues. So when you first start using risks and issues in Planner, you'll find there's a model which we think is fairly comprehensive, which we've set up to start off with, which has risk statuses and categories. It has a risk scoring model. It has color coding, which we think matches pretty well for the things that we often see done in most or many risk management processes. It has particular types of responses and response statuses and all that sort of stuff. But you can make that your own because risk management, whilst it's quite mature as a process across industries, every organisation seems to score things differently. Depending on the organisation, they will have different types of risks, so the categories can change. They'll often have different statuses and nearly always have some different scoring. So our standard is a 5x5 model, but many people will run a 3x7 or a 3x3 or a 4x4 or whatever it is they want to do. And they might score those slightly differently as well. So you can change all that. You can come up to here, File, and Manage Lookups. And these are all those various categories we were just talking about. So, for example, risk impacts, these are our 5 entries and the values that are associated with them. So if severe was going to, you could make that a 10 if you wanted to. So it really jumped that up the scoring when you had a severe impact being registered. But the point is, you can make that match your own organisation's requirement if there is a formal requirement to your organisation, or you can feed back into here the lessons from as you've developed your risk management processes. So all of those categories are available for you to change if you want to. So there's a detailed video going through all of that and talking about how you might then save and lock that down into your template going forward. But it's not just about saving the configuration of the file. We're going to move on and talk about content now in our templates as well. So that's in the case of our registers, but also in the case of the plan, the Gantt area as well. So firstly, thinking about the risk side, you'll see here we've got a sort of set of risks identified for this project. Probably started as a blank register, which is how most people will tend to start. And we added risks as we identified them. Hopefully we did a risk assessment at the beginning of the project and identified a load of them, and not too many came up later on, but who knows. We've done a very popular Planner Masterclass, number 6, about learning from lessons. And it's a really good example. I'm just going to talk about it very briefly, but I suggest watching the video if you've not seen it yet. And it refers to a planner template which we make available for download from that video actually. So I'm just going to open up and we can have a look at here. So this is a planner file which is just about risks. It doesn't cover issues and it doesn't cover tasks. And of course you can set planner up in that way if you want to. You could have this built into your plans, risks and issues template as well if you wanted to. What this does is we identified 47 common problems that occur with projects. The sort of thing that might have been picked up during a lessons learned exercise. We had a problem with currency exchange rates. Goes into the lessons log. Hopefully then future projects look at that lessons log, identify that as a problem and think about it on their project. Why not just shortcut that issue and identify, which is what we've done here, the common problems that our sort of projects might have, and put them as a pre-existing list of risks. So when you open a project, you're hinted at these are the sorts of problems we've had in the past. The project manager can then go through them and go, oh well actually this is all in the UK currency, we don't need to worry about that, we'll delete that one and we'll come to these other ones where we know we might have a problem and we'll keep those and score those. So you can start to work from a good prompted list, which you haven't have to go off and find. It's the things that are relevant to you. Of course, you can add to this list as you go on. You could, of course, take this and add to it the things that are relevant to you and take away things that aren't, and have a nice focused starting point. And then, of course, often running through an exercise like this will make you think about some other things as well. And you can then add those items separately. So you can also, of course, have pre-configured responses on these as well. So there might be some pre-configured responses. We know when we've had problems with not scheduling peer reviews, we've done something about it, and this is what we've usually done. And again, that really helps people get to grips with not only what the risks might be, but actually how to then address them. So really quite a useful idea, and it's about populating, like I say, feeding back from experience of other projects into your starting point. So your starting point is more mature, more advanced, further on, less work for the project manager to do, less things that they can get wrong. Even if that's you, just reminding yourself about the things. So that's default content into registers. That generally happens in risk registers. Of course, we're often taking our risk and moving it into an issue when it actually happens, rather than necessarily pre-prompting a list of issues in our registers. But when it comes to the plan, we can do the same sort of thing. So our brand new empty project schedule that we ship into most of our methods looks like this. It's very simple. It's just reminding us of the sort of things that we can do with Planner: summary groups, milestones, dependencies, pre-populated with some descriptions, pre-populated with some resources, as I've mentioned before. And you can take that model and take it further. So if your projects always have the key same starting points or approval points to get through a business process, why not build them in? If you've always got the same endpoints for wrapping up and completing a project and signing it off and post-project reviews, etc., put those in as well. And perhaps if you've got some common building blocks for delivery aspects of projects, you might save those as well, because of course they can be reused, and we can use our copy paste feature to copy entire blocks of content and then move them along so that one starts after the other. So you can provide the building blocks that make it quicker and easier for people to get good quality planning done in a consistent way. If you've got a highly repetitive project, say the rollout of 5G, and you're doing the same thing in lots of different places, you might have a very much standardized project plan, and you're just that's a standard template with all the content in it, and all you do is create the next one, or copy the file, use it again, and just change the start dates and change who's allocated to the tasks. That's quite a common thing to do, rather than rebuilding the plans every time. So put the content in. And if you think carefully about that, let's say you can resource those tasks as well. And a really good idea is to resource them with dummy names, not a person's name, but the sort of role or skill name. If you're using our multi-user platform, that means in the resource model, you're going to see when you open this project reporting that there's a requirement for a certain number of hours of project manager and business analyst on this project, which is not yet allocated to a user. And that's flagging for you that's the case, and your resource analysis, when you look at all project management, will be picking up that there's some as yet unallocated requirement for project manager there, which is a very helpful thing to do. Now, of course, when you come to the specific task, you could come in here and you could then say, oh, I don't want it to be project manager, I want it to be me, so I'm going to type in my name separately and take out project manager and put me in. So I could do that, but that's going to be a pain if there's lots and lots of tasks to do that on. So a much better way of dealing with that is to instead go File, Manage Resources, select Project Manager, and just change it to be me instead. Like that. And that's gone through and identified all those occurrences and changed them over. Nice and easy. And like I say, so that's now going to be showing in my main system that I'm allocated to those. They'll appear on my task lists. The ones allocated to just business analyst will just be appearing as a demand. So there's something that we need to ascribe or assign to a particular person. So that's a really useful thing again to do. So we're building up things that are, like I say, establishing good practice and good process, and passing on experience from previous projects. Back in the same planner file that we started with now, perhaps I then took one of those templates sort of 6 weeks ago and modified it through into the plan for my predicted project, and set all that up. Unfortunately, some unforeseen circumstances have happened, and now I can't start my project the date I wanted to, because that's a month ago. And so, I would have to come back in here and move all those along and fiddle around with them. If there's lots of dependencies in here and they're correctly set up, then that probably shouldn't matter. But sometimes things are run off particular dates. In this case, we've got bits of both in this project. And if I just shuffle this one along, then I'll have to come down and shuffle this one as well. And if I've got, as many cases are, plans might be, up to 500-600 tasks, I've got to go through and find all those instances. So for working with templates, we've come up with a new thing. It's in the brand new latest version of Planner, which we put out last week. That's version 14 or 5.1.14. And we can come up here, File, Preferences, and in Plan Preferences, we've got this here, Move All Tasks. So if I wanted to move them all to be today, it works out that's 24 working days ahead using our working days calendar, as we talked about earlier. So I can apply that change. When I come back here, I'll find it's moved this first task along, and the rest have been taken care of by dependency. And then any other one it's found, it's shifted along by the similar amount as well. So if I'm not happy with that and I want to jiggle it a few days further, I can move that along again using the same mechanism. So that's really quite a neat way of rearranging my tasks. I can just set up my template project. I can just zip it all forward. Of course, if they're all running on dependencies, you don't need to do that. But often, real projects are not got a fully dependent chain of activities. Some things have been set to start on particular dates. Of course, you might then need to rejig it because you might need to come in, but at least it's moved everything as a starting point the same amount forward, and then you can go and look at that. So there's a whole set of things there that you can use like a toolkit to help Planner give you more maturity, like I say, feedback on lessons that you've learned in previous projects, make your starting point a little bit more mature and more developed. Of course, many customers do this in their multi-user platforms. They change the method template, so these are launched into every new project. If you're just using Planner and Community Edition, you can just simply create a new project with Community Edition and then drop in this template instead. So a little bit more work to do, but hey, it's free, so that's all right. So I hope you found that really helpful. Like I say, pointer down in the comments below to those other Planner Masterclasses that I've mentioned. And a link for downloading the latest version of Planner 2 if you want to try out that shifting of start dates. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you found that helpful.